She inherited a fortune, but the lawyer was her long-lost secret son. The woman who gave away her baby boy 43 years ago had no idea. The man handing her the pen was him. The morning Eleanor Voss walked into the law offices of Hargrove and Associates in downtown Charleston, South Carolina. She told herself it would be simple. Sign a few papers. Accept whatever her estranged uncle had left her. Go home. She was wrong. Eleanor was 61 years old, retired, quiet, and careful. She'd spent 30 years as a high school English teacher in Savannah, Georgia, grading papers, tending her garden, attending her church. She had a daughter, Melissa, a son-in-law named Brett, and 2 grandchildren she adored. She had a modest house on Oleander Street, a 15-year-old Subaru, and a savings account that would embarrass most people her age. What Eleanor did not have was secrets, or so she believed. The law office was everything her life wasn't. Tall ceilings, mahogany walls, leather chairs the color of dark wine. A receptionist with a tight bun and tighter smile led Eleanor down a corridor lined with framed diplomas and oil portraits of men who looked like they'd never doubted anything in their lives. She was brought into conference room B and told that the attorney handling her uncle's estate would be right with her. Eleanor sat. She folded her hands. She looked out the window at the harbor. Her uncle Gerald Voss had been the black sheep turned golden boy of the family, a real estate developer who'd spent decades building shopping centers and subdivisions across the Carolinas. Eleanor hadn't spoken to him in over 20 years. Their falling out had been quiet and cold, the way Voss family arguments always were. Gerald had said something cutting at Thanksgiving in 2002. Eleanor had left early and never gone back. She'd heard through cousins that he'd gotten sick the previous spring. Pancreatic cancer. Fast. Brutal. The kind that gives you 4 months and a lesson in humility. Gerald had died in September, with no wife, no children. And apparently, according to the letter Eleanor had received 2 weeks ago, with a very specific wish. He wanted Eleanor to have everything. She didn't understand why. She didn't trust it. But her daughter Melissa had insisted she at least hear them out, so here she was. The door opened, and in walked the attorney. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with broad shoulders and the kind of posture that came from confidence rather than vanity. Dark hair silvering at the temples, a navy suit perfectly cut. He was probably in his early 40s, Eleanor guessed. Sharp eyes. Kind eyes, actually. An unusual combination. He extended his hand. Mrs. Voss, I'm Nathan Calloway. I'll be handling your uncle's estate. Eleanor shook his hand and felt nothing unusual. Nothing at all. Thank you for coming, he said, settling across from her. I know the drive from Savannah isn't short. It's fine, she said. I just want to understand what this is all about. Nathan opened a folder and began to explain. Gerald Voss had died with an estate valued at approximately $14 million. Real estate holdings across 3 states. Liquid assets. A condominium on Sullivan's Island. A collection of vintage cars. And he had left every single penny. Every property, every account, every asset. To Eleanor. No other beneficiaries. No charities. Just her. Eleanor stared at Nathan Calloway across the mahogany table and felt the room tilt. I don't understand, she said quietly. We hadn't spoken in 20 years. Why would he? He left a letter, Nathan said. He slid an envelope across the table, cream-colored. Her name written in Gerald's handwriting. The same sharp, angular letters she remembered from Christmas cards decades ago. Eleanor picked it up but didn't open it. There are conditions, Nathan continued. Not complicated ones. Your uncle wanted the estate distributed within 90 days. He asked that you meet with me 3 times over that period to walk through the assets and make decisions about what to keep, sell, or donate. He was very organized. He always was, Eleanor murmured. She finally looked up at Nathan, really looked at him, and something moved through her, something she couldn't name, a discomfort that felt almost like recognition, though she was certain she'd never seen this man before in her life. Are you all right, Mrs. Voss? He asked. Yes, she said. Yes, I'm fine. Where do I sign? She drove back to Savannah in a daze. $14 million, Gerald Voss, who had humiliated her at Thanksgiving over a comment she could barely remember. Gerald Voss, who had never once apologized, leaving her everything. She didn't open the letter until she was home, sitting at her kitchen table with a cup of chamomile tea and the evening light coming through the curtains. Eleanor, I know you don't understand. I wouldn't either if I were you. The truth is, I've been holding something for a long time. Something I was asked to hold and told to forget. I should have forgotten it. I didn't. There are things about your past that you think are buried. They aren't. When you sit across from Nathan Calloway, I want you to really look at him. Then look in a mirror. I'm sorry I waited too long to say any of this in person. Gerald Eleanor read it 3 times. Then she set it down and sat very still for a long time. Eleanor Voss had been 18 years old in the summer of 1981. It was the summer before her freshman year at Clemson University, and she had been in love, wildly, stupidly, completely in love, with a boy named Thomas Bright, who was 23, played guitar, and was the most beautiful person she'd ever seen. Thomas was also already spoken for. She hadn't known that in the beginning. By the time she found out, it was too late in more ways than one. She was 3 months pregnant when Thomas Bright got on a plane to Seattle to marry a woman his parents had chosen. And Eleanor was left standing in her parents' kitchen in Columbia, South Carolina, understanding for the first time what it meant to be completely alone. Her parents, devout, proud, terrified of shame, made the decision quickly. Eleanor would carry the baby to term quietly. No one outside the family would know. And when the baby came, he would be placed for adoption through a private agency. Her uncle Gerald, young then, just starting his career, but already a man who knew how to handle things, had arranged it all. The baby was born on March 14, 1982. A boy, 7 pounds, 4 ounces. Eleanor held him for 4 minutes. She had asked for more time. They had said no. She had never spoken of it again. Not to her parents when they died, not to her husband James, God rest him, not to Melissa, not to anyone. She had folded that chapter of her life into a very small square, placed it somewhere deep inside herself, and spent 4 decades believing she had successfully become someone it never happened to. Now she sat at her kitchen table with Gerald's letter and a feeling like the floor was opening. When you sit across from Nathan Calloway, I want you to really look at him. She got up, went to the bathroom mirror, stared at her own face. The strong jaw, the dark eyes, the slightly wide-set brows that Melissa had always said made her look distinguished. She thought about Nathan Calloway's face across the mahogany table, his jaw, his eyes. The way he tilted his head when he was thinking, like he was listening to something slightly to the left of what you were saying. Oh God, she thought. She called Gerald's phone out of instinct before she remembered he was dead. Then she called the law office. Nathan's assistant told her he was unavailable, but would return her call in the morning. Eleanor left her number and sat back down at the kitchen table and did not sleep for the rest of the night. Nathan called at 8:47 the next morning. Mrs. Voss, good morning. Is everything all right? I need to ask you something, Eleanor said, and her voice was steadier than she deserved. And I need you to be honest with me. A pause. Of course. How old are you? Another pause, longer this time. 43. Eleanor's hand tightened on the phone. And where were you born? The silence that followed was not a lawyer's pause. It was something else entirely. When Nathan spoke again, his voice had changed. Something had shifted in it. Some professional veneer grown suddenly thin. Mrs. Voss, he said carefully. Is there something specific you'd like to discuss? Yes, she said. I think we need to meet, not at the office, somewhere else. They met at a coffee shop on King Street in Charleston, a neutral, ordinary place full of college students and tourists, and the smell of roasted beans. Eleanor arrived first and chose a table in the corner. When Nathan walked in, she watched him before he saw her. She watched the way he moved, deliberate, unhurried, the way he scanned the room before he found her, the slight furrow in his brow that he smoothed away before he smiled. He sat down across from her. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Then Eleanor took a breath and placed Gerald's letter on the table between them. Nathan looked at it. He didn't touch it. How much do you know? She asked. Less than I probably should, he said quietly. She told him everything. The summer of 1981. Thomas Bright. Her parents. The 4 minutes in the hospital room. The private adoption Gerald had arranged. All of it. In a flat, careful voice. The way you read something aloud that you've written and rewritten until the emotion has been edited out. When she finished, Nathan was looking at the table. My parents? My adoptive parents, and told me when I was 16. He said slowly. They said I was born in South Carolina. That my birth mother was young. That it had been private. He paused. I never looked for you. Why not? Because they were my parents, he said simply. I wasn't angry. I just didn't see the point in disrupting someone's life. Eleanor felt something crack open in her chest. But you ended up handling Gerald's estate, she said. That's not a coincidence. Nathan finally looked up. No, it's not. He hesitated. Gerald Voss contacted me about a year and a half ago. Said he had an estate matter, potentially complex. He was a significant client. I took the meeting. Another pause. The first time I met him in person, he spent the first 10 minutes just studying me. I thought he was eccentric. Old money does that sometimes. Did he tell you? Not directly. He started asking questions. Where I grew up, what I knew about my birth, whether I'd ever thought about searching. Nathan's jaw tightened. I told him I hadn't. He got very quiet. Then he said, You should. I thought he was just being philosophical. It wasn't until he died, and I opened the estate file and saw the primary beneficiary's name. He stopped. You recognized it, Eleanor said. I had to sit in my car for 20 minutes before I could go back into the office, he said. Yes? The coffee shop hummed around them. A barista called out a name. Someone's toddler laughed. Eleanor looked at the man across from her. This stranger, with her jawline and her late husband's wide-set eyes, and 43 years of a life she had not been part of. And she said the only thing that felt true. I am so sorry. I have been sorry every single day. Nathan was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I know. Nothing is ever clean. Melissa found out 3 days later. Eleanor had meant to tell her carefully, gently, with preparation. Instead, Melissa had come over unannounced and found her mother sitting at the kitchen table with a photograph Nathan had sent. Him and his adoptive family at Lake Murray the summer he graduated from law school at USC, laughing into the camera. Melissa stood in the doorway of the kitchen and looked at the photograph, and then at her mother, and said, Who is that? And Eleanor told her. The next hour was not quiet. Melissa cried, first in shock, then in grief, then in something that looked frighteningly like anger. She asked why Eleanor had never told her. She asked about her father, James. Had he known? She asked what this meant for the money, for the estate, for everything. He's not after the money, Eleanor said. You don't know that, Melissa said. He's the lawyer, Mom. He controls all of it. He didn't know who I was until... He says he didn't know. Eleanor felt the floor tilt again, differently this time. The specific vertigo of watching someone you love become afraid of something you can't be afraid of anymore. Melissa, she said quietly. He's your brother. Melissa left without taking anything she'd come to borrow. Meanwhile, across town, Nathan was dealing with his own earthquake. His wife, Dana, a pediatric nurse, sharp and practical, and the person who'd kept him grounded through 15 years of high-stakes estate law, had listened to his confession with the particular stillness of someone constructing a response very carefully. You're handling the estate of the woman who gave birth to you, she said. Yes. Nathan, I know. You need to recuse yourself. Ethically, you have to. I know. Does she want you to? He hadn't asked. He called Eleanor that evening and asked, What do you want? Eleanor said. I want to see this through, he said. But not because of the money. The money is... He stopped. I need you to understand that the money has nothing to do with any of this for me. I know, Eleanor said. And she did. But there was a third party who had a different opinion. Gerald Voss, it turned out, had a half-brother nobody had remembered. Roy Voss, 68 years old, retired, living in Myrtle Beach, emerged through a law firm in Columbia, 2 weeks into the estate process, with a claim that Gerald had been mentally incompetent when he changed his will, and that the estate, or at least a significant portion of it, rightfully belonged to the Voss family line, which Roy pointed out with a lawyer's precision, did not include Eleanor, who was a niece by marriage, not blood. It was the kind of challenge that could tie up an estate for years. And Roy had found something. A psychiatric evaluation from Gerald's oncologist, a routine assessment during his cancer treatment, that noted significant emotional volatility and possible cognitive effects from pain medication. It wasn't much, but it was enough to file on. Eleanor called Nathan the morning she received the legal notice. "I know," he said. He'd already seen it. "Roy Voss has been waiting for this. He contested Gerald's estate once before, 10 years ago, over a property dispute. He lost, but not before costing Gerald 2 years and about $400,000 in legal fees. So what do we do?" "I fight it," Nathan said. "You're compromised. You said so yourself. Then I bring in co-counsel and I fight it alongside them." A pause. "Eleanor." It was the first time he'd used her name. They both noticed. He knew Roy would come. "I think that's part of why he set this up the way he did. He was making sure someone would protect you." "You," she said. "Yes," he said. "Me." It came out during discovery. Roy's lawyers, digging for evidence of Gerald's incompetence, subpoenaed his personal files, emails, journals, private correspondence. They found nothing useful for Roy's case, but buried in a folder of scanned documents from 1982 was something nobody had expected. A letter, written by Gerald, never sent, addressed to Thomas Bright. Gerald had known. He'd known that Thomas Bright, the man who'd left Eleanor pregnant and fled to Seattle, was not just her summer heartbreak. Thomas Bright was the son of Arthur Bright, Gerald's oldest business partner. The families had been financially entangled for decades. Gerald had arranged the adoption not only because Eleanor's parents had asked him to, but because Arthur Bright had asked him to, had called in a favor, had made it clear that if this situation could be made to disappear quietly, their business relationship would flourish accordingly. And flourish it had. Gerald had spent 40 years building his empire, partly on the foundation of a secret that wasn't his to keep. The letter, written and never sent, was addressed to Thomas Bright, and said in simple and devastating language that Gerald was releasing himself from his silence, that a child existed, that the child deserved to know his history, that if Thomas Bright had any decency remaining, he would stop hiding behind the arrangement their fathers had made. Thomas Bright had died in 2019. He had never received the letter, but now Nathan Calloway was reading it. And for the first time in the entire proceeding, in all the paperwork and discovery and legal maneuvering, Nathan set down the document, placed both hands flat on his desk, and stared at the wall. His father had known. His birth father had known he existed, and had chosen money and silence, and a family arranged by business partners over acknowledging him. Gerald Voss had spent 40 years carrying the guilt of a conspiracy he'd been too young and too ambitious to refuse. And in the end, with nothing left to lose, he had tried to do the only thing he could. He had made sure Nathan and Eleanor would find each other. He had built his estate into a structure that guaranteed they would have to sit across from each other in a conference room and look closely enough to recognize what they were to one another. It was manipulation. It was also, in its strange, cold, Gerald-like way, an act of love. Roy Voss lost his challenge. The psychiatric evaluation was ruled insufficient to demonstrate incompetence. Gerald's will stood. Nathan co-counseled with a colleague and navigated every motion with the particular fierceness of someone who was no longer doing this for a client. He was doing it for his mother. He didn't call her that. Not yet. Maybe not ever. They were both too old and too careful for easy language. But somewhere in the months of hearings and filings, and long phone calls in the evenings, something built between them that had no clean name, and didn't need one. Melissa came around slowly. It took 4 months, 2 very difficult dinners, and a long walk on Tybee Island, where she and Nathan talked for 3 hours, and cried for about 40 minutes of them. Nathan brought his wife Dana. Melissa brought her husband Brett. The kids ran ahead on the beach, unaware they were in the presence of an uncle they hadn't known about that morning. Eleanor eventually sold the Sullivan's Island condo and most of the investment properties. She kept enough money to ensure that Melissa's family was secure, that Nathan's children would have their college paid for, and that a scholarship was established at Clemson for first-generation students. A quiet private act of closure for the 18-year-old girl who'd gone there the fall after the hardest summer of her life. She donated a significant portion to a South Carolina foster care advocacy organization. That was her own idea. Nathan said nothing when she told him. He just nodded once, the way he did when something landed precisely where it needed to. And one Sunday in March, the 14th, though Eleanor told herself it was a coincidence and didn't quite believe it, they sat on her back porch in Savannah. Eleanor, Nathan, Dana, Melissa, Brett, and the kids. Someone had brought too much food. The grandchildren were chasing each other around the yard. The light was doing that particular late afternoon thing it does in Georgia in early spring, where it goes gold and low and makes everything look like a memory you're still inside of. Nathan was telling some story about law school that made Dana roll her eyes with great affection. Eleanor watched him and thought, 43 years, she thought, 4 minutes. She thought about all the ways a life builds its walls around the things it can't afford to look at, and all the strange and indirect routes that truth takes to find you anyway. She thought about Gerald, who had been more calculating than kind, but had managed in the end to be both. She thought about a baby boy. 7 pounds, 4 ounces. March 14th. Nathan glanced over and caught her looking. He raised an eyebrow. A question. She shook her head. Nothing. She smiled. He smiled back. Outside, one of the grandchildren shrieked with joy over something in the garden. A butterfly, it turned out. They all looked. It hung there for a moment, improbable and orange, and then it lifted and was gone. Some things take 40 years to arrive, but they do arrive. New stories drop every single day. If you don't want to miss them, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Takes 2 seconds, means everything.